On May 21st, 2021, a young woman in South Korea, a proud sergeant in the Air Force, made a choice that would echo far beyond the walls of her military dormitory. Lee Ye-ram didn't just end her life that night, she left behind a devastating video, a final cry that tore through the silence she'd been forced to endure. Her words exposed a nightmare of betrayal, assault, and abandonment at the hands of those she trusted most. Even more heartbreaking, that same day, just hours before, she had registered her marriage to the love of her life, a man who would return home to find her gone forever. When her story broke, it ignited a firestorm across South Korea. Nearly 400,000 people signed a petition demanding justice, their voices rising in a chorus of outrage. What was in that video? Who was responsible for pushing her to the edge? And how could such darkness fester in one of the nation's most elite military units? Join us as we unravel every haunting detail of this tragedy, a story of courage, loss, and a fight for truth that refuses to fade. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another case that needs to be heard. Our story begins with Lee Ye-ram, a woman whose spirit seemed unbreakable. She wasn't just a sergeant in the South Korean Air Force, she was a symbol of determination, a dreamer who defied expectations. From a young age, Ye-ram stood out, not just for her striking beauty, which turned heads wherever she went, but for the quiet strength that radiated from her. Talent scouts saw her on the streets of Seoul and begged her to step into the spotlight, offering her a glittering path to fame as an actress or idol. She could have had it all: wealth, adoration, a life of ease. But Ye-ram turned them down every time. Fame wasn't her calling. She had a different dream burning in her heart, a dream to serve her country, to wear the uniform of a soldier, to prove that she could stand tall in a world that often told women like her to sit down. In 2017, that dream came true. At the age of 23, Ye-ram enlisted in the South Korean Air Force and earned a coveted spot in the 20th Fighter Wing, an elite unit known for its prestige and its role in joint exercises with the United States. Stationed in Seosan, this wasn't just a job. It was a testament to her grit. She'd fought through rigorous training, late nights, and the weight of proving herself in a male-dominated field. To her, that uniform wasn't just fabric, it was armor, a badge of honor she had earned with every ounce of her being. Her family beamed with pride. Her fiancé, a steady presence in her life, saw her as his hero. And Ye-ram? She believed she was on the path to becoming the officer she'd always envisioned, someone who could protect, inspire, and lead. But she couldn't have known that the very place she'd fought to belong would become the crucible of her undoing. Fast forward to May 21st, 2021, a day that should have been one of the happiest of her life. That morning, Ye-ram and her fiancé stood side by side, signing the papers to officially become husband and wife. There was no grand ceremony, no white dress, just a quiet, joyful moment between two people who'd built a love strong enough to weather anything. Or so they thought. That evening, they celebrated over dinner at an upscale restaurant in Seoul, the kind of place where the clink of glasses and soft laughter filled the air. Ye-ram was radiant, her smile as warm as ever. After dinner, her husband had to leave for a night shift at work. She drove him there, still glowing, still the woman he'd fallen in love with. "Good night," she texted him after he left, her usual message laced with a promise. "See you tomorrow." He had no reason to think tomorrow wouldn't come. Back at her dormitory, past 11 p.m., Ye-ram moved through the quiet space with a strange calm. She opened the fridge, pulled out a meal she'd lovingly prepared for her husband's next day, and set it on the table, adjusting the lid just so. It was a small act, a gesture of care that spoke volumes about who she was, someone who thought of others even in her darkest moments. Then she picked up her phone. She didn't scroll through photos or call a friend. Instead, she turned on the camera, pressed record, and let the words she'd held inside for too long spill out into the night. "I tried to fight," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "I followed the procedures, but no one stood by my side. I was betrayed, forced into silence. I can't bear it anymore." The video wasn't long, but it was a dagger to the heart, a raw, unfiltered confession of the hell she'd endured. When she finished, she set the phone down, the screen still glowing with her final testament. Then, in the stillness of that room, Lee Ye-ram took her own life. She was 27 years old, At 6:30 a.m., her husband returned home, exhausted but eager to see her. He opened the door, expecting the familiar sound of her voice or the sight of her curled up asleep. Instead, silence greeted him. Thick, suffocating silence. Then he saw her. Yeram lay motionless on the floor, her body cold, her face peaceful in a way that shattered him. The meal she'd left on the table sat untouched, a cruel reminder of the life they'd planned. Beside her, her phone glowed faintly, the video still queued up, unwatched. He stumbled forward, his hands shaking as he called her family, his voice breaking with every word. "She's gone," he said over and over, as if saying it out loud could make it less real. The room bore no signs of chaos, no overturned furniture, no evidence of a struggle. It was as if Yeram had orchestrated her exit with the same precision she'd brought to her military career. But the orderliness only deepened the tragedy. She hadn't acted in a moment of impulse. She'd planned this, resigned to a fate she felt she couldn't escape. As her husband sank to his knees, clutching her lifeless hand, the phone beside her held the key to why. A truth so unbearable it would soon set a nation ablaze. When Yeram's family arrived, grief gave way to a desperate need for answers. They played the video, and with every word, their sorrow turned to rage. Yeram hadn't just recorded a goodbye. She'd left a detailed account of the torment that drove her to this point. She spoke of sexual assault at the hands of her own comrades, men she'd worked alongside, trusted, saluted. She described how she'd reported it, followed every protocol, begged for justice, only to be met with indifference, threats, and betrayal. "They made me feel like I was the criminal," she said, her voice cracking. "They took everything, my dignity, my hope. Death is the only way I can wash away this shame." The assault wasn't a single isolated act. It was the culmination of months of harassment that began when Yeram joined the 20th Fighter Wing. Her beauty and confidence, the very traits that made her shine, also made her a target. At first it was subtle, flirtatious comments, lingering stares. She brushed them off, kept her head down, even brought her fiancé to the base to signal she wasn't available. Most backed off. But not Sergeant Zhang, an older colleague whose entitlement festered into obsession. He exploited his seniority, crossing boundaries with accidental touches and lewd remarks. Yeram pushed back, but the more she resisted, the more his resentment grew. Then came Warrant Officer No, a superior she barely knew, who coerced her into attending a party with high-ranking officers. "It's an opportunity," he'd said, his tone leaving no room for refusal. At the event, Zhang cornered her, drunk and aggressive. She fled, but he followed, forcing her to drive him home. On a deserted road, he attacked her, overpowering her as she fought in vain. The next day she reported it to No, expecting support. Instead, he conspired with Yang to silence her, threatening her career and twisting the narrative to paint her as the problem. The military police, her last hope, took her evidence, dash cam footage of the assault, and did nothing. Zhang claimed he was too drunk to remember, and they let it slide. No one was punished. No one cared. For months, Yeram battled alone. The harassment didn't stop. It escalated. Zhang taunted her, threatening to tell her fiancé lies about that night. Her superiors pressured her to drop the case, warning her family would suffer if she didn't. Transferred to the 15th Fighter Wing, she hoped for a fresh start, but the rumors followed her. Whispers that branded her a liar, a troublemaker. Every stare, every cruel word chipped away at her. She took medical leave, but the calls from Zhang persisted, relentless and menacing. On May 18th, she returned to the base, her spirit battered but not broken. Yet 3 days later, on her wedding day, the weight became too much. She chose to leave, but not without ensuring her voice would be heard. When Yeram's death hit the news, the South Korean military tried to bury it. A curt statement called it an isolated incident, offering no apology, no investigation. But her family refused to let her fade. Her father, consumed by grief and fury, filed a petition with the Blue House, accusing the Air Force of complicity in her death. He included her video, her suicide note, and a file she'd meticulously compiled, proof of the crimes and the cover-up. The public response was explosive. Within 48 hours, nearly 400,000 signatures demanded justice, a tidal wave of anger that couldn't be ignored. Protests erupted in Seoul and beyond, with citizens clutching photos of Yoram, chanting her name. The media dug deeper, exposing systemic failures in the military, decades of unchecked abuse, silenced victims, and protected perpetrators. Under pressure, Sergeant Jang was arrested. He confessed, not just to assaulting Yeram, but to another victim years prior. In court, he received 9 years, a sentence heavier than most, but still a hollow victory for many. Warrant Officer No and other officers faced no charges, their roles obscured by the Air Force's stonewalling. But Yeram's father wouldn't relent. He hired a lawyer, uncovering evidence of a broader conspiracy. Multiple senior officers implicated in the assault and its aftermath. The fallout reached the top. General Lee Seong-yong, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, resigned in disgrace. The Minister of National Defense issued a public apology, a rare admission of guilt. Even President Moon Jae-in addressed the nation, vowing to protect soldiers' rights. Yeram's sacrifice had cracked open a festering wound, forcing accountability where there'd been none. But for her family, for the thousands who mourned her, one question lingered. Was this justice, or just the beginning? Lee Yeram didn't die in vain. Her voice, captured in that final video, became a beacon, a call to confront the shadows within institutions meant to protect. She was a soldier, a wife, a daughter, a dreamer who wanted to serve. Instead, she was betrayed, her light snuffed out by those who should have stood beside her. Her story asks us, how many more Yerams are out there, suffering in silence? How deep does this darkness run? This isn't just her tragedy. It's a mirror held up to a society that must decide what it stands for. If her courage moved you, like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep her fight alive. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.